Now, my approach to this, and this is the kind of the key bit about this image here, is that I was an industrial designer. I had no experience with writing, and I was daunted by this commission that I talk about having fun with my work, and I picked up the phone and rang up a publisher and said, hey, I've got a book idea for materials. Want to meet me? And so I just kind of gushed all this information about why I wanted to do a book of materials. And then got a contract and then thought, okay, what do I do now? Because I can't write. So I surrounded my desk with food books, and because I felt that, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make a connection. So where do I find that inspiration? So the inspiration came from food, because I felt that if you talk about materials in the way that food writers talk about food, and you can make people kind of, put together ingredients in new ways and give a sensorial kind of quality, then you have some kind of new method of communicating materials in that way. So I kind of took the way that food books are put together, and the use of imagery, the use of different layers of text. So you have the ingredient, the column, you have like the main caption, and then you have a how-to list, and breaking down that recipe into a series of layers that make it very digestible, very accessible, and using imagery as a very seductive way of drawing people into a story. And if there was a story, then I would find the story, and I would write this material as if it were a story. So I kind of use these different, techniques, and I would, in some cases, just find a sentence or a paragraph that talked about a recipe, and I would take out the words that were the food words, and I put the material in its place. And I would somebody would be telling me about a material that was invented by a guy or developed by a guy who had a house in France, and he had a tragic story, and he had a vineyard, all this kind of stuff. And so I wrote the material about his story, because I just thought, you're going to remember that more than me just describing what you can see on the page. So I kind of did all these techniques, and I translated that format of information into this book. And so you have a little bit of contextual information here. You have the big image. You have the name of the material at the top right in this case, and you have like the recipe down here with little bits of key information. And then I have this thing here, engineering your comfort. And I want to make this clear, because when you write a book, there is a level of control that you don't have. When you're designing anything, that's always the case. And I want to say that some of these statements up here were changed by the publishers because my statements didn't fit on the page, didn't look very nice. So some of them are not mine, and some of them are really silly. But the idea here was that it was meant to kind of suggest something. It was meant to open up a door in the reader's imagination, so that they weren't prescribing something, but they were kind of just opening a door and allowing a gap to take place where you could fill or find an application that would be right for you. So trying to make that misinterpretation part of the kind of creative process. And I really got into the whole thing of words and trying to find new ways of describing, in this case, plastic, and things like any color, breathless, brittle, carved, worn, cheap, clarity, conductive, degradable, dynamic, economical, feels like skin, finger skinny, frosty, gooey, high gloss, intelligent jelly, like a steamy shower. Like the steamy shower actually came from the first iMac, and that was on the phone to one of the designers at Apple who said, the inspiration came from somebody thinking of a steamy shower and not seeing through the material completely. And I really got into this, and I would get a sample of material. It was really important I had something in front of me when I was describing it, and I'd think, this feels like it feels like my ear, and I put things in there. And I just had fun with it, and then I kind of developed that. So leaving the books a little bit behind now. This is a commercial project. This isn't research, but it's very much in line with what my statement is. If you're trying to communicate, if I have to tell you the context of this, there was a project that I was doing with a client who wanted to communicate the qualities of a material And I asked them what these qualities were, and the qualities are that it feels warm, has a tactile quality, and warmness, feeling of warmth or cold to an engineer is defined by thermal conductivity. And thermal conductivity, you have a value there, which is watts meter degree Kelvin. I don't really know what that means, but I thought that means nothing to an industrial designer. But if you say, well, actually, thermal conductivity of this material is this, and it feels like a peach here, then you have some kind of bridge, and you have some kind of reference point. And if you want to talk about surface roughness, which is how smooth or smooth or rough something is, if you say, well, an Oreo has a surface roughness of 90 microns per meter, then that has a much stronger story. And then shore hardness, 55A is the hardness of your hand, the skin of your hand. So trying to use, again, things that are very common to people, things that are very accessible, and bridging that with a very technical language. And then the same client, in order to talk about production, decided that if you were going to show a material which was often used as a skin on a product as an overmolding, then you should just cut the products in half so that people could see how the thing is molded, and again, have much more meaning. So kind of back to this definition, and as Ezio Manzini says, if materials are in a state of transition, then what are the new definitions, and what are the new kind of ways of defining materials? Because ceramic, glass, metal, plastic, and wood, it's a very convenient way. We all understand what they mean, those things. But actually, I can injection mold. If I use injection molding as a process that's traditionally used for plastic, I can now injection mold ceramic, and I can injection mold metal. So therefore, if I'm an industrial designer and I want to mass produce a material, I don't really need to look under plastic, because I can do that with ceramic, or I could do, with metal. And you have all these kind of hybrid materials, plastic, woods, and plastics that are trying to be metals, and metals that are trying to be plastics. So kind of what are the new definitions? These are just some examples of injection molded ceramic and injection molded starch. What are these new values? I've kind of broken it down into three. So if you were trying to categorize materials, how would you categorize them? What would those headings be? The first one would be production, because there needs to be a level of information that is delivered about production. So mass production, batch production, craft production, cost, the story. So, if we're kind of giving new definitions to materials, then where does the story part fit into that? And that's kind of defined by brand, by experience, by emotional qualities, by associations. And the iMac, which I just talked about, could be a very good example of a story. It's not about practical application of polycarbonate. It's about the value that it gives that product in terms of demystifying and making computing fun. And then well-being. And well-being, I've kind of put under well-being, sustainability, energy embodiment, but it also fits in with story as well, because I think as buyers, as consumers of products, of objects, we are, increasingly interested in the nature of a material, the nature of production, of where it came from, who made it, etc., etc. And so this, I think, is a very important part. So those kind of three territories: production, story, and well-being as being defining territories.